Hello and welcome into this special edition of NBC4 Sports Extra. I'm your host, David DeGuzman. We're getting you ready for Saturday's game between Ohio State and Minnesota, set to take place at the Horseshoe on Saturday night in a game that you could watch on NBC4. And in the next half hour on this edition of Sports Extra, we're going to sit down and talk with the play-by-play voice of Big Ten Saturday night. That's Noah Eagle. He's in his third season calling Big Ten games for NBC. He's got quite the resume. In his first year, he called an NFL wildcard game and an NFL regular season game on NBC and Peacock. He's also done Big Ten men's basketball on Peacock. Last year, you may have heard his voice doing basketball coverage at the Paris Olympics, getting to call Team USA's gold medals in both men's and women's basketball. He was honored with an Emmy, by the way, for that coverage, winning for Outstanding Live Special in a championship event. He's also won an Emmy himself for Outstanding Personality Emerging on Air. He won that Sports Emmy Award last year. He's also from a pretty good family of sports broadcasters, namely his dad, Ian Eagle. You may have heard of him. He calls games for CBS. He's called so many events from the NFL to NCAA March Madness. Those two have quite a great relationship. Oh, and by the way, both Noah Eagle, Ian Eagle, and also, by the way, myself, not to toot my own horn, but we all went to Syracuse University. Of course, that's kind of where the similarities end. I think those two are living quite the dream in terms of sports broadcasting, getting to call some great events. Noah Eagle graduated from Syracuse in 2019. He's called Orange basketball and football. He's also called lacrosse games at Syracuse, sports that I used to cover back in my days at Syracuse University. So over the next half hour, we're going to kind of talk with him, get to know him a little bit more, get his take on this year's Ohio State football team. We'll also get a look at his preparations for the return of the NBA on NBC. That's coming up pretty soon here on NBC4. And also we'll talk about what his relationship is like with his dad, a really unique relationship. I call it our generation's Jack and Joe Buck when it comes to sports broadcasting. So Noah Eagle coming your way here on NBC4 Sports Extra. My conversation starts with what's special about this Ohio State football team? What stands out about this year's Buckeyes? Take a listen. Your thoughts on how the Buckeyes are doing right now? Obviously, statement win over Texas and a pretty good start to Big Ten play with defeating Washington in a pretty hostile environment. They're looking pretty good right now, aren't they?
Yeah, I think it would be hard to argue anything else. Let's start defensively because that's really what the star of this team has looked like so far. I mean, the defensive unit overall has just been absurdly impressive. And start to finish, Matt Patricia just feels like he's brought a different vibe. Obviously, Jim Knowles had done great work the last couple of seasons in Columbus, and last year they were the top defense in the country. But it's not just continuing that success, but doing it in a slightly different way. I think that's incredibly impressive to come in and just hit the ground running at that level. I think there's been a lot of questions as to how much they're allowing a new quarterback to really do. And are they going to, at some point, let Sayan loose, so to speak? That'll come. I think that for now, you want to make sure you're building to that point. And last week against Washington was a really good step in the right direction because I've been there. I've called games there. It is not an easy place to play. The crowd is into it. The scene set is incredible. And they were juiced up for that game in Seattle. So for him to go and handle that environment, not have any real pre-snap issues, I think was a big deal. And at the end of the day, you've got the best player in college football, according to probably 99% of experts, if you want to call him that, in Jeremiah Smith. And so when you get the ball to him, good things will happen. Bo Jackson looks ridiculously impressive as well. And so there's a lot to like so far and certainly things to still get better. But I think Ryan Day's talked about that. He's been very open that you're still building and it's still a marathon over the course of a season. And so they're just going to keep getting better until they get to these bigger games as each week comes on.
Yeah. I know you got to know everyone on a roster, although, it's interesting with how Big Ten scheduling works. We don't know where you're going until like 2 weeks prior. But it must be interesting when you're going through your charts. You obviously know Jeremiah Smith. You know who the starting quarterback is. But as the season goes on, especially after last week, Are you kind of like starring these players, looking back at their tape, and you're like, oh, I've got to know more about Arvell Reese and Caden Curry?
Yeah, 100%. And look, some of the guys that Ohio State has, especially on the defensive side, were here, but maybe not starters a year ago. And so, having done the Buckeyes the last couple of years, at least they were on the chart, and maybe they weren't out there for 90% of the snaps, but even if they were out there for 30% of the snaps, I at least saw the name and the name was in the back of my head somewhere. And so there are a number of guys like that on this team in particular, because this team's different than maybe some of the other Big Ten teams that aren't at the top of the table. You know, Ohio State and the team that I won't mention that they play at the end of the year, and some of the Penn State, that the team Oregon, although Oregon's a little different this year, but the top teams that are always in the conversation towards the top of the college football world aren't necessarily the teams that take the same level of transfers as maybe some of the other ones that are lower down in the Big Ten. And so there's different preparations for different teams in that sense, because you might get one squad that has a lot of holdovers, and Ohio State to a certain degree is like that. But then you might get another squad that has 13 new starters, and they're all from 13 different schools because of just how modern college football is. So the Buckeyes are a little bit better for me in that sense. But at the same time, I enjoy the challenge of learning an entirely new roster. And to your point, each week is different. So I don't get to just sit down and laser in on the Buckeyes. And so it's fun to come in and really try to fully immerse myself. By the end of the weekend, I'll be able to tell anybody anything they need to know about OSU. But that's a process that continues up until Saturday night.
Yeah. To that end, what makes Ohio State a little difficult to prepare for or call, or what makes it challenging or unique when you're preparing for a team like the Buckeyes?
Well, there's so multiple. And I think that most teams, you kind of know, and you mentioned Jeremiah Smith, obviously, is a star and everybody knows him. And Carnell Tate, I think, probably is one of the more underrated players in the country. It's similar to Emeka Ibuka the last couple of years. And now we get to see it at the NFL level. I think that it's difficult because they are so talented. So you have to prepare for even more guys, because more guys are going to get opportunities. And even maybe somebody who you don't expect to go out there and pop off on any given Saturday can go out there and pop off. And so you really just have to be absolutely sure that you've got everybody covered. But the rest of it, it's no different than any other team. I think that it's not necessarily more difficult one way or the other. It's just about making sure you have supreme focus going into a game. And so that's what we'll have this weekend. We're excited to see them, this iteration of them, because the last 2 years, we've really enjoyed the teams and we've enjoyed the talent that they put out on the field, and we enjoy the coaching staff. And now adding Matt Patricia in there is going to be another new wrinkle for us, but excited to see them at home as well, because we didn't get to go to the Shoe last year, and it is one of the best environments in college football.
You know, you're in this position where you get to go to some of the most unique and interesting locations, especially in Big Ten football. What's cool about calling a game at the Horseshoe?
Well, I think what's interesting is when you think of the Big Ten, the majority of the teams, and now a little bit different with some of those West Coast teams, but the majority of the teams aren't in major U.S. cities. And I think Columbus is certainly a major U.S. city. You've got a professional sports team, a couple of them. You've got a legitimate airport. You've got a legitimate downtown vibe. Like, all of that stuff is a big deal, because outside of Minnesota, who's playing them this weekend, that's in Minneapolis, now USC and UCLA in Los Angeles, and Washington's in Seattle. But really outside of that, you're not going to get that, right? And so what makes it unique to me is that even in a city that has professional sports teams and is a major city and has all these other things going on, they're still the number one show in town. And you feel it every time you go. You feel how passionate the fan base is. And it stretches wide, obviously beyond Columbus, but just certainly within Columbus, walking around, you feel that. And you understand that. And working with Joshua Perry, who obviously played there and starred there, we got a sense of what it means to those fans. Todd grew up in Ohio. He knows. So you get a sense and a vibe of just how important it is to everybody that the Buckeyes not only win, but dominate every single week. Yeah. And you feel it going into the Shoe. Special place because there's so many fans, and it gets so loud, and they're so proud. And the unique, obviously, architecture of the building and why it's called what it is that stuff's all cool. The band is incredible. The best band in the land is for very much, and all intents and purposes, living up to its name. So you get all these different vibes and these different feels going into the shoe. But I think we're excited now because it's only the second time we'll have a night game there. I know the fans have been looking forward to that. And it's different. Night games are just a little bit different. You've got all day to prepare. All the fans have all day to prepare. The players have all day to prepare. And there's something about being under the lights that just changes the vibe. So to only have had done one so far there 2 years ago, I think we're excited to get back and feel what this year's team can do with the lights on.
Your schedule's about to get really interesting with the NBA coming back. But how do you prepare for something like that, especially with this kind of high-profile role you're about to take on? Your schedule's about to get really interesting with the NBA coming back. Of course, you're trained for this. We all know, yeah, at Syracuse, it's not a surprise when you're doing a basketball game and then another football game, probably 2 or 3 days in between. Sometimes it's the next day. But how do you prepare for something like that, especially with this kind of high profile role you're about to take on?
Yeah, I respect for getting the cues in there. That was impressive work by you. I would say I've done it, which has helped me. And when I was doing the LA Clippers on radio, I was doing that solo for the 82 plus games. And then I was also doing college football at the time at a different network, and college basketball at a different network. And so there would be weeks where I'd have 5 games. And so now, how do you manage doing 5 games over the course of 7 days? It's time management. It's always making sure that you're looking ahead and planning ahead. I do physical. I'm a dinosaur in this sense. I do a physical calendar and planner because it just helps me see it better and plan it a little bit more efficiently. So I'll write everything down well ahead of time. And then as I look through maybe 2 weeks ahead of time, I try to get a sense of, okay, I have this on this day, this on this day. This is a day where I can just get a ton of work done. I can kind of go back and forth. So it's just about budgeting your time, and you start to get a little bit more efficient in how you're going to do things. I think when I only have a football game over the course of a week and it's my only game of the week, I can just completely immerse myself. I can go above and beyond. And that's when I have stuff that I wouldn't ever likely use, but I just put it down because I had that time. And maybe when I don't have as much time, I'm just more focused on the stuff that I really, really need. And then a couple of the extra things that I'm still going to want to put down, but I'm not going to go as crazy as I might have been if I only had that game, because I just don't have the time. I've got a different game I got to go and prepare for. So it takes supreme focus and it takes a lot of organization, which fortunately I've learned over the years. I used to be a procrastinator. You cannot procrastinate in this business if you want to do multiple games.
Yeah, we've learned that the hard way, definitely. Let's talk about just a little bit the return of the NBA on NBC. How excited are you? I mean, such a storied history, the league with the network. Now it's coming back, and you're obviously playing a big role. Just how excited are you to just play a part in that?
I'm beyond pumped. The NBA has been among the biggest passions of mine from a very young age, growing up around the game and with my dad doing the New Jersey and then Brooklyn Nets games. I was going to the Nets games when they were going 12 and 70. I was at almost every home game. I was that type of NBA sicko, as they called it. So I can't wait to be a part of it. We've got an incredible crew, and I'm going to get to work with some amazing people who got to have amazing careers as players and now as broadcasters. But more than anything, I think we're excited to celebrate the game, to show it in a really fun light, in a different light. We've got some new innovative ideas that are going to be, I think, exciting for fans and new, which is something that is always interesting. You don't know how it's going to go, but I've got a good feeling about it. And we're just excited to be back in the NBA business because it's a fun product, a product that I think is in a really good spot right now with its parity and continued difference in every year of who's going to come out on top. And so we're just excited to be able to tell some of those stories.
We have inevitably, for better or worse, reached the part of the interview, and you mentioned your dad, so let's kind of go there.
I mean, he's a competitor now, so I want to squash him. What do you mean? I want to make sure that I destroy him.
The big house is packed, and we welcome you to the broadcast booth. Noah Eagletop, Blackledge, Catherine Tapp, and Terry McCauley. Glad you could join us for this 2025 season, a season with a lot of expectation.
We have inevitably, for better or worse, reached the part of the interview, and you mentioned your dad, so let's kind of go there. Although we won't go too in depth, but for those that don't know, your dad, Ian Eagle, a pretty well respected play-by-play guy. What I love about you guys though is the camaraderie that you two have that a lot of us don't get to see because obviously you guys work for different networks. What's the connection like, the vibes now between father and son now that you're like kind of years into being in the business yourself? I mean, I saw a recent video on social media, you guys just kind of shooting the breeze about football and stuff. Obviously that bond is so unique. You're our generation's, Jack and Joe Buck.
Yeah. Well, I will take that 11 times out of 10. That is a big time compliment for sure. Yeah, I mean, he's a competitor now, so I want to squash him. What do you mean? I want to make sure that I destroy him. No, it's been really cool because we already had a fantastic relationship with father and son, and that has continued, and that will never end. That is the first, most important part of our relationship. But now to have these shared experiences on top of it has been just so incredible and something that I will never take for granted. I think the fact that we could have conversations and have all these shared experience of people that we interact with, and I can always go to him. I mean, it's a huge advantage for me, obviously, for a number of reasons. But the biggest one is anytime that there's a situation that I'm not entirely sure about, he's been through it already. And so to have someone that I can call and get a legitimate, honest reaction and response from, that is critical to continuing on an upward trajectory and making sure that I'm making the proper decisions. And more than anything, I think just making sure that I'm handling my business in the way it's supposed to be handled. He's done that for 30 plus years. And so that is huge. But yeah, it's fun. I think it's fun because we can just talk about things that normally a father and son for him wouldn't have talked about. And I'm not even talking about the broadcasting side. I'm saying when you have a neighbor on a plane that's barefoot, and now you can talk about the fact that I just did that 2 weeks ago on my flight from Ann Arbor. That's because that's what they do there, right, David? I just know that it's been a blast for us, and I hope that he's enjoyed it as much as I have. I think he has, and I can see it in his face. I think it's been a fun extra phase of our relationship that'll continue to grow.
Yeah. We got to find a way somehow to do a crossover and get you guys. I know it's not really like two play-by-play guys on the same broadcast, but I'm sure we can make it. I can't be the first person who's brought that up. So
no, we've had a lot of people that want the bird's nest. So I don't know, maybe one day.
Two more for you. This trip to the shoe, just part of this kind of pretty incredible year that you've had. You're literally living quite the dream for broadcasters. I mean, even these last couple of years, last year with the Olympics, I'm still going through Court of Gold, which you are highly prominent in.
Yeah.
I guess for, the question that, every journalist and broadcast has, like, what's this like for you right now? Sometimes you're just in it and you're going through the motions and you're going through the routine, but you ever take a step back and you're like, this is pretty dang cool.
Yeah. So that's the key. And I would tell you that I probably don't do it enough until after the season ends. I'd say after this year ends, I'll probably look back and say, man, we got a great game, Notre Dame, Texas A&M. That was pretty special. And the whiteout game and that one double overtime, that's pretty cool. And, we've had some great environments and atmospheres, and now we get to go to the shoe, and that is always a special. I think you probably use the right word. It's dream. And this is if you're somebody who wants to be a broadcaster, these are the environments and atmospheres that you dream of being in and games that you dream of calling. The Olympics was at the top of that list. But even while I was doing the Olympics, it wasn't until well after the fact that I could take the step back. And the Court of Gold documentary helped me do that because I got to relive a lot of it. I just think you're so immersed in it. And as we talked about, a lot of times I have a game and then I have to get right back and get ready for another game, or I have to travel to a different game or do one or the other. So it's a lot of constant movement where I don't really get that chance of going, man, this is special. And so I'd say after the season's end, that's usually when I sit down and I start thinking back in my head. And fortunately, I've got a very good memory where I can remember the feelings and specific moments and conversations and things of that nature. So I'll take an hour and I'll just sit down and think back, and I'll laugh to myself and smile just thinking about some of the things I've gotten to do.
Yeah, well, so that's the full circle question for me, but we got to cater to our audience. So let's bring it back to Ohio State. You saw Penn State and Oregon last weekend. Now you're seeing Ohio State. So I'm wondering, people are wondering down the road, what's the Big Ten title race going to look like? It seems like Ohio State's in the driver's seat. I wonder how Penn State is going to, respond after that heartbreaking loss in double overtime last week.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating. And I think more than anything, if you're an Ohio State fan or any fan of somebody in this conference, you feel really good about the conference. Let's start there. The fact that the number one team in the country, the Buckeyes, number two team in the country, Oregon, you've got Penn State and Indiana, both in the top 10. You've got the team at the end of the season that is in the top 20, I think, right now. USC was ranked. Illinois is still ranked. It's a conference that has a lot more depth maybe now than it had in previous years. And that's a good thing. So we start there. And you can make the argument it's the best conference in college football. I know that there are people down south that tend to disagree, but it's certainly up for debate. And I think that's a really good sign for where the Big Ten continues to head in the strength of the conference. The second part of it, of the actual race, Ohio State certainly is in the driver's seat. To me, they control their path. If they keep winning, obviously it's irrelevant. They're going to find a way to win the conference, and it's all good. But even if you just have strong performances, you want, and I know everybody in Columbus cares about the final game of the regular season, more so this year probably than maybe ever before, just with how things have gone over the last couple seasons. But they're very much in the driver's seat. Oregon's really good. We just saw them. They are uber talented. Dan Lanning is an excellent football coach. I think that they deserve to have a legitimate belief that they will be right there as well. Penn State, with a one loss, they're still really talented, really experienced, but you've got to see if they can do it in the big game. And that's been the question mark surrounding them really in James Franklin's entire tenure there. And so for him and for Drew Aller, can you get back on the horse? Because again, everybody in Columbus knows that Jim Knowles running a defense can yield some pretty ridiculous results. And so they're still banking on the fact. And I know that Jim Knowles already spoke to the team after the loss this weekend and said, hey, we lost 2 last year in Columbus. And guess what? We were the last team standing. So they have that belief, I think, in State College. And Indiana's a team that I know that there were questions surrounding what the Hoosiers' likelihood and legit chances were of being a Big Ten contender and a national championship contender. Here's what I'll say. The Ohio State game last year, first time that they were in an environment like that against a team like that. And it was tight. It was tight until the end of the first half. They were one drop punt away, and then they, according to Kurt Cignetti, they told the kid to kick it one way. He kicked it a different way, and the return essentially ended that game. They believe with a couple mistakes being eliminated, that could have been different, or at least it could have been closer. And they felt the same way about their game against Notre Dame in the college football playoff. That team is good. That team is incredibly well coached. Their quarterback is better this year than Curtis Rourke was a year ago. Their offensive line is better this year than it was a year ago. Their defense is probably slightly better this year than it was a year ago. They are a better team than they were last season, and they won 11 games last year. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing which teams can separate themselves as we start to head into the meat of the season. But Ohio State is the team to beat until proven otherwise.
And that's exactly what fans in Columbus want to hear. Noah Eagle, appreciate the time, man. This has been fun.
David, anytime, man. Appreciate it.
Our thanks to Noah Eagle for the time, taking time out of his preparations to call Saturday's game between Ohio State and Minnesota. Great conversation. And if you love that content, we're going to have much more from Noah Eagle on the next edition of NBC4 Sports Extra as we go behind the scenes as to what it takes to put on a production like Big Ten Saturday Night. We're going to talk with Noah Eagle again just on how he prepares to call a game. And plus, we'll take you inside the production trucks that are sitting right outside the Horseshoe as you get to see what it's like inside those trucks leading up to Saturday's contest between the Buckeyes and the Golden Gophers. But again, our thanks to Noah Eagle, very talented young man, about to call a pretty good game on Saturday night, getting a chance to call the Buckeyes for the third straight year, but his second time at the Horseshoe since he started calling games for NBC and its Big Ten coverage a couple of years ago. So looking forward to that. We'll have that behind the scenes episode on the NBC4 streaming channel, as well as NBC4i.com as well. But that'll do it for this edition of NBC4 Sports Extra. I'm David DeGuzman. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for watching. For more NBC4, download the NBC4 streaming app. You'll get free 24/7 local programming streamed straight to your living room. Just search NBC4 Columbus on your Apple TV, Amazon Fire, Roku, or Samsung device.